Real bad man. Yes, Rastafari. What's happening, chat? Hatman Strikes Back, daily boxing news, another live stream. What's going on, people? We're going to be talking about Partridge. That's right, Luke Partridge, a.k.a. Tyson Fury. And the reason I bring this up is because the Gypsy King, or as some people call him, the Gypsy Queen, is obviously trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes once again, as he tends to do, by trying to leapfrog far more deserving fighters into a trilogy match with Alexander Usyk because he doesn't want to risk fighting anybody else. Because if he were to lose to whoever, an Anthony Joshua, an Ajit Kabayel, a Filip Pergovic, you name it. And I'm not saying these guys would beat him. I'm just saying that Tyson Fury understands there's risk involved. And if he were to lose to anybody else other than Alexander Usyk, not only can he no longer keep perpetuating this silly nonsense that he was robbed in both Usyk fights and is therefore number one heavyweight, he wouldn't even be able to call himself number two heavyweight. And Tyson Fury can't live with that, okay? And so that's Partridge. That's what he's doing. He's trying to diminish everybody else out there and make out as though there's only one fight in the division that needs to be made, which is him fighting Usyk again, all right? So it's necessary for him to downplay everybody else in order to convince people that that fight should happen. In addition to that, you got man like Gad running around. I saw him on TalkSport with Adeola Depot, you know, the podcast they do together? And it's quite a good podcast, right? But Gareth A. Davis's Fury fanboy behavior started rearing its ugly head once again. After those two defeats that Partridge suffered to Usyk, it's like Davis put his pom-poms away for a few months. But in that podcast he did with Adeola Depot, he was once again coming out with silly nonsense. He said that Tyson Fury is clearly, he said clearly, the number two heavyweight of this era. How so? I was always saying, long before he fought Usyk, he hasn't proven himself to be the number one of the era. But man like Gareth A. Davis, man like Simon Jordan, so many other people in the boxing industry, trainers, some fighters, etc., etc., and certain members of the public, they were parroting this, that Fury's the number one. He's clearly the best of his generation. How are you going to call yourself the best of your generation when you haven't proved it in the ring? Why are people giving the guy a crown that he hadn't earned? They were doing it then with the number one spot, and now Gareth A. Davis is trying to do it now, you know, again, with this number two spot. Okay, he's not number one. And I told you guys all along, until somebody's proven it in the ring, don't put that crown on their head. He tried against Usyk and failed, so he's clearly not number one. But now we've got his agents like Gad trying to do the same thing for him in the number two spot. No, 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 no. He hasn't proven he's number two. Let's get into the conversation, all right? But first of all, we shout out the live chat. Big up Mr. Luca. Says 2.5 years since he last beat a pro boxer. Mr. Luca with the heat early on. Keeping his foot on Partridge's neck. All right, shout out to Samil. Shout out to The Real Heel. We got J. Cole. We got Oscar. Big up Oscar. Fight Sport Talk. We got Peter. We got Attabot, we got Exactamundo, Striker, Triple R, Jelly Mode, Ayed, Toro, big up Toro, Chainsaw, yes, yes, ha ha. All right, okay, all right. Everybody has a horse, right? Everybody has a horse. Ha ha. Jack Trussler. Who else we got here? We got Grind, big up Grind, Godo, Ortega. What's happening, Ortega? Costanza versus Kramer. We got, I'll just call you MC. Big up MC. I guess it's MC Sorotron or something. But big up yourself, sir. At 23, baby mother. That's right. Real bad man. Shout out to Capitano, Colonia, Jelly Mold, Philip Carl Roberts. There you go. Dominic A in the chat. We got Cash. Okay, so let me lay my case here. Andy P, big up Andy P. Wow, Andy P says that his surname is Partridge, but he's no relation to Luke Partridge. Are you sure? Big up Andy P. All right, we got a Partridge in the chat. The Hideout, salute. We got Muhammad, big up Muhammad. TC, Okay, so let me lay out my case here. Tyson Fury has been a very good big fight performer. That's one thing I will not take away from him. When he stepped in there, when the stakes are high, he has stepped up to the plate and he has not underperformed. He didn't underperform against Klitschko. He didn't underperform in the Wilder fights. Now, in the first fight, some people might say he underperformed and slightly in the third fight, but I guess you can put that down to conditioning to some extent, but he still won the fights at the end of the day, right? He didn't freeze or anything like that. Certainly in the second Wilder fight, he turned up, he performed well. Dylan White was a big fight, even though White had seen better days as far as his punch resistance. And although he lost to Alexander Usyk, he still turned up. You know? He didn't put in like really poor performances where he didn't give it a real go. He gave it a real go. Although some people would critique him in the second fight for not being aggressive enough. In fact, you could critique him in both fights for not being aggressive enough. But still, Tyson Fury is a good big fight performer. Yeah, he tends to up his game accordingly when he's fighting the top opposition. With that being said, he beat Vladimir Klitschko 10 years ago. Since that time, he's beat who? Deontay Wilder 3 times and Dylan White. That's it. Okay, there's Derek Chisora there. Derek Chisora is a fringe contender, bro. We don't even need to include Chisora when we're talking about assessing his resume for, the number 2 spot in this generation of heavyweights. So he's got 3 guys on there. Wilder 3 times, Klitschko, and Dylan White. Compare that to, some people are mentioning Joseph Parker. He beat Carlos Takam. He beat Andy Ruiz. More recently, he beat Deontay Wilder, but it was a washed version of Wilder. He beat Zheli Zhang. He beat Martin Bakole. If you want to mention Derek Chisora, he did beat him. Is there anybody else I'm forgetting with Joseph Parker's record? Then we can move on to Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua beat Klitschko too. And it's amazing to me the way that people give Fury all this credit for beating Klitschko, which is fine. And they act as though the version of Klitschko that AJ fought was like a million times worse than the version of Klitschko that Fury fought, when one fight followed the other. What on earth are people talking about when they say that, Klitschko was at the end of his career, is finished, but they act as though the version of Klitschko that Fury fought was in his prime or something? He lost to Fury on points. He didn't take a load of damage. He wasn't sitting on the couch for 2 years as Fury's tried to make out. No, he was actually training for the Fury rematch. And because Fury failed a PED test and got his belts taken off him, Klitschko then switched the camps from training for a Fury rematch to training for AJ. So the narrative is hilarious, right? It's the very same version of Klitschko that Fury fought and AJ fought. Okay? Fury outboxed him over 12 rounds comfortably. AJ was getting outboxed and got dropped, and it was an up and down seesaw fight, but he eventually stopped the guy. So both guys got wins over the basically same version of Klitschko. Fury did it more cleanly, but he didn't stop him. AJ, it was more messy, but he did stop him. All right? Then you got AJ beating the likes of, I don't know, Dominic Brazil, Carlos Takam, Eric Molina, Joseph Parker. That win has aged really well, even though it was a really boring fight. The win has aged well. Alexander Povetkin obviously lost the first Ruiz fight, came back and beat Ruiz in a rematch. Kubrat Pulev. Then, of course, you had the Alexander Usyk fights. He then beat the likes of Otto Wallin, who gave Fury all sorts of problems. Iced Ngannou in 2 rounds, who also gave Fury all sorts of problems. Tyson Fury has not fought Anthony Joshua, bare minimum, for the number 2 spot. And you can't even call Anthony Joshua the number 2 now, since he's been wiped out by Daniel Dubois, although you could argue that AJ's past his best, and this was not a prime version of AJ that lost to Dubois. Okay. If you want to put Dubois in the next generation and count him there rather than in the current generation, you can make that argument. So let's stick with that. Of his contemporaries, has Tyson Fury proven himself to be the number 2? No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. So Gareth A. Davis giving him that crown that he hasn't earned, what does that do? That actually helps Fury sell this propaganda that the only fight that needs to happen in the heavyweight division now is an Usyk Fury trilogy match. That's what it helps do. They act as though Fury has cleaned up everybody else in the division. Oh, he's clearly the number 2 of this era. How? This guy is being given the number 2 spot by people like Gad, when, as somebody else mentioned there, it's been 2.5 years since he beat a pro boxer, Tyson Fury. Absolutely incredible. So people calling Partridge the number 2. They're talking a load of number 2. I'll tell you that. And it's not to say that Partridge can't prove himself to be the number 2. I might suspect that he's the number 2 heavyweight of his era. But that's not enough to give him the crown. Or the runners-up prize, the silver medal, however you want to describe it. That's not enough. You got to go in there and prove it. Until you prove it, no, we're not going to call him the number 2 heavyweight. We're not going to do that. We're not going to play that game. Yeah? We're not going to play that game. Come out of your silly little fake retirement and fight some top contenders. Show us what you're about. Never mind all this leapfrogging, being aided and abetted by the likes of Mauricio Solomon, the slug, right? He says that Fury can come out of retirement and get a title shot whenever he wants. We don't need to hear that. We definitely don't want that to happen. Shout out to Fight Sport Talk. He says, Fury, and especially his fanboys, did overhype that win drastically. Yeah, the Klitschko win. And another thing they overhyped about the Klitschko win is the fact that Fury did it in Germany. Oh, he fought Klitschko in Germany. Klitschko was the champion. Everybody fought Klitschko in Germany just about. The only time you weren't fighting Klitschko in Germany, well, one of them was Povetkin, because Povetkin's people won a purse bid, which was like, I think, the biggest purse bid in history at the time. And other than that, the only time Klitschko weren't fighting in Germany is by choice. If he chose to fight in the United States or whatever. But the vast majority of Klitschko opponents were fighting in Germany because nobody had a choice. So people are acting like Fury deserves extra credit for being willing to fight Klitschko in Germany. No. He didn't have a choice. If you want a title shot, you got to fight Klitschko in Germany. Simple. Yeah, I remember that fight, Sport Talk. So Tyson Fury before the Klitschko fight was basically saying that Klitschko's a washed up old man. Yeah, those are his words coming back to haunt him. Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, if Parker is to beat Usyk, does he take the spot? The number one spot of his generation? No. No. Because think about it. It will be like when Ken Norton beat, Ali had already been beat by Joe Frazier, to be fair, and Joe Frazier was an incumbent champion, so that's probably not the best example. Maybe the best example would be to say when Oliver McCall beat Lennox Lewis. Did that give him the number one spot? No. When Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson, was he all of a sudden the best of his generation? No. When Leon Spinks beat Muhammad Ali, was he all of a sudden the best of his generation? No. You can't just be a one-hit wonder. Not that Joseph Parker has never done anything else in his career, but he's got losses that he's never avenged. You know? Lost to Anthony Joshua, lost to Dylan White, hasn't avenged those defeats. So until he avenges at least one of them, let's say the AJ fight, even if he were to beat Usyk, I could not say that he's the number one, because think about it, there's an age gap. Alexander Usyk is 38. Alexander Usyk is not at his best anymore. Joseph Parker's like, what, 32, 33? We forget how young he is. He turned pro at a young age. So that's my take on it, Ibrahim. Big up yourself. Shout out to George T. R.I.P. Dwight Mohammed Karwi. Yep, there were many others also. R.I.P. in for Dwight Mohammed Karwi. He was a very spirited cruiserweight champion back in the days. Fought Holyfield a couple of times. Stepped up to heavyweight. Fought George Foreman. So shout out to George for the super chat. Shout out to Osas for the super chat. He says, has there ever been a trilogy in heavyweight history when you're down 2-0? He needs to fight his way back to a mandatory spot or something. Completely agree with you. There was no, or there is no grounds to make a trilogy between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. It's only Tyson Fury's propaganda which would pave the way for it to happen. Lying and trying to distort people's perception of things. But if you look at it in the cold light of day, there is absolutely no need for there to be a trilogy match. Now, has there been a trilogy match in heavyweight history when somebody's down 2-0? Maybe a fighter going up against a journeyman, because it still happens today. But more so back in the days. Fighters would often face the same journeyman like 2, 3, 4 times. I can't think of examples off the top of my head. But that did happen a lot back in the days. Yeah, you'd fight the same journeyman a ton of different times and beat him every time. So if you want to call that a trilogy, but in terms of like competitive fights, you know, world level fights, unless there was controversy involved, I want to say I don't think so. And I'm talking about real controversy. So this isn't in the heavyweight division, but Terry Norris had a series of fights with a guy called Santana. What was his first name? Any of you guys remember the first name of the guy, Santana, who Terry Norris fought and he kept getting disqualified? As in, Terry Norris kept getting disqualified. I think he fought him at least 3 times. Is that right? I'll have to check BoxRec in a second, but I remember him fighting Santana, and it was the most bizarre thing. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. It says, Fury's resume is shockingly poor. When you analyze it, he really conned people. Yes, he really did. Big up D-Man. Fury did a number on people psychologically, manipulating their perception. He absolutely did. Shout out to George for the super chat. He says, Kawi versus 175 now. Crushed, survives, or dominates? I would say competes. I wouldn't say crushed. I wouldn't say he would crush everybody now. But he would be very, very competitive at 175, I think, Kawi. I think he'd be competitive against Bivol because he was a hell of a handful, you know, as a cruiserweight and light heavy. He was a hell of a handful. I'd say he'd be competitive because he was so short. You know, people often talk about how height is an advantage, and it is, and it can be. But lack of height can be an advantage because it makes you so awkward. If you're a quick guy and you tuck up tight and you're short and you're bobbing and weaving coming in and you're covering your chin and throwing shots out of a crouch like Kawhi did, it can be very, very awkward to actually fight a guy like that, especially if you're not used to fighting someone that short and they're coming at you from different angles and all that. So now I think it'd be a problem at 175, to be honest. I think it'd be very awkward for Bivol. Him against Beterbiev ever be a good fight. Kawhi against Beterbiev. Remember, Kawhi, first fight with Holyfield, that went like 15 rounds, right? He got stopped in the rematch. In fact, I swear the first fight went to points, or am I buzzing? Again, if there's any people with a better memory than me right now, I'm sure the first Kawhi fight went to points. It was a hell of a fight with Holyfield at cruiserweight. But anyway, yeah, I see him being very competitive, Kawhi. And outside of the top two guys, Kawhi might beat everybody. I mean, I might feel confident to pick Kawhi over everybody else outside of the top two. Because he was a hell of a handful in his day. Shout out to Evil Uncle Phil. He says, please get up Fury's padded record on box rec. Shout out to The Real Heel. He says, Luke versus Cesaro was a 3-0 trilogy. And oh my gosh, how did I even forget that one? Yes, how did I forget that one? I guess I forgot it because it was so forgettable. Yes, indeed. Partridge treated us to a third Chisora fight when he beat the guy twice the first time. I mean, the first two times. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And there was no controversy. Somebody mentioned Taylor Serrano there, 3-0 trilogy, but all three fights were highly competitive. Whereas with Fury and Chisora, okay, the first fight was somewhat competitive, but Fury still won it clearly. The second fight was just a complete whitewash. There was no grounds to make a trilogy, but you know how Tyson Fury does. Wanted an easy payday, and I love the way that Fury marketed it as some type of altruistic move. You know, oh, I'm giving my pal Derek a payday because I love him so much. No. Tyson Fury did that so he wouldn't have to fight a dangerous contender. That's why he did that. All these altruistic motives. What a joke. Here's the guy who said he'd donate his whole purse to charity. $5 million or whatever it was. £5 million. Nonsense. Where's the receipts for that? Fury just talks rubbish. And then, of course, remember when he was doing those silly an evening with Luke Partridge nights? Him and his dad were doing that. Maybe his dad still does it. And he was pacing up and down on stage saying that, oh, I'll fight AJ for free. But AJ will never fight me. I'll fight him for free. As long as both of us don't take a purse and it's on free-to-air television and all the tickets are given away for free. And he would get like rounds of applause at these talks he would do when he's pacing around up on stage, sweating like a pig, right, coming out of all this rubbish. And all his fans believed him. It was bizarre. It was so weird. Yeah, so that's the guy who, people want to believe in. Like, come on. But yeah, thank you, The Real Heel, for reminding us that was a 3-0 trilogy between Partridge and Chisora. Let me try to get a screenshot, if I can, of Partridge's record. And nearly typed in Luke Partridge then. I wish you could edit on BoxRec the way you can edit on Wikipedia. In fact, somebody might want to go do that. Huh? Go edit Tyson Fury's Wikipedia to say Luke Partridge. I'll take a screenshot of it before they change it back. Huh? And irritate the Fury fanboys from now until Kingdom Come. Luke Partridge. Yeah, I don't think this screenshot thing's going to work. I'm going to have to zoom out too far to be able to see what it says on his record. But shout out for the super chat. Evil Uncle Phil. Shout out to Jack Trussler. He says, did you see Tank Davis has so-called retired? Yeah, that was it Rick Glazer who put a tweet out saying that Tank Davis is retired? But he's done this before, saying, oh, I've retired, I'm not going to fight again. And man, who cares about that guy at this point? He's doing the same kind of nonsense as Partridge. You know? And that's why, by the way, did you guys notice this? That's why Tank Davis was supporting Partridge in both the Usyk fights. He made out as though Usyk got a gift against Partridge. He said, one good round doesn't win you a fight. What's this guy talking about? So they're kindred spirits, right? Partridge and Tank Davis, the Cabbage Patch Kid. Stank Davis. Huh? They're kindred spirits. So, yeah, I'm not surprised by Tank Davis coming out with all that. I wish he would retire at this stage. If he's not going to fight Shakur Stevenson or somebody relevant, just retire, bro. Do you know what I mean? But maybe he's like Partridge. He loves all the attention seeking of people thinking, oh, will he, won't he? He thinks he's keeping us on the edge of our seats, you know, with all this willy won't he stuff. But actually, no. So, yeah, please just retire, Tank. Don't come back to boxing. If you're not interested in fighting anyone serious, don't come back to boxing. Somebody asking me, have I ever gone bunny hopping? No, never. Shout out to Black Dynamite for the super chat. He says, Usyk was the perfect antidote to the Fury lies. Yes, he was. Man came in and washed away the propaganda. A shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, love or hate Joshua, I think he tried to fight the best. Do you agree? Absolutely, I agree. Anthony Joshua tried to do what Usyk did. Anthony Joshua tried to do what Usyk actually did do. It's just that Usyk was good enough to succeed and Anthony Joshua was not. So I commend Anthony Joshua on his attempt. I commend him on his attempt. You can never take his attempt away from him. No matter all the silly propaganda that's come out from the Partridge fanboys and the LDBC and, you know, the Wilder cultists and all that, PBC cultists. It's all silly nonsense. Now, AJ did try, but he just weren't good enough. The guy who was good enough, who took the baton from him, was Anthony Joshua. And, you know, it's kind of fitting that Alexander Usyk was... Alexander Usyk beat Anthony Joshua first out of all the main names at heavyweight. It's kind of fitting that he beat AJ first, because symbolically, he was taking the baton, or the baton, right? I'm pronouncing it like an American. He was taking the baton from Anthony Joshua and basically telling him, you've done well, I'll take it from here. I'll show you how it's done properly. There won't be losses to little fat Mexicans and stuff like that, right? I'll show you how it's done properly. And I can get it done because they'll never see me coming, right? So symbolically, it kind of makes sense and it's kind of fitting that Usyk went in there, beat AJ first, took the baton off him because AJ was actually trying to fight everybody. He just weren't good enough to beat everybody. So yeah, Usyk took it on from there and completed the grand work. That sounded Masonic. I'm not a Mason. But yeah. Kyle says Javonta Bobby Brown. Stank Davis. That's my favorite nickname for Tank Davis. Stank Davis. Adrian says LDBC, question mark. LDBC, as I understand it, stands for Lions Den Boxing Community. LDBC is basically like a bunch of African American PBC fans. That's the best way I can describe them. You know, Black American PBC fans. They call themselves the LDBC. I don't know, I just shrug my shoulders, bro. I don't know. Shout out to Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, Luke and Tank went to the Mayweather ducking uni. Indeed. Disciples of Mayweather in many ways. Spiritual disciples. I mean, with Tank, a literal disciple. But with Tyson Fury, more like a spiritual disciple. And there are many pictures, by the way, of Fury with Mayweather. He's a big Mayweather fan. He doesn't often talk about it, but he's a big Mayweather fan. Luke Partridge, a big Mayweather fan. And you can tell so much of what Mayweather did influenced what Partridge did. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, African Americans are very tribal with boxing, I've noticed. Yes, they are. I mean, many groups of fans are tribal with boxing, particularly in America. You know, the Mexican boxing fans, they really get behind their guys, and it's all very tribal there. You know, Latino boxing fans in general. But I try to step away from the tribalism of it and just look at things objectively. And of course, I like certain fighters because of their style or, you know, whatever the case may be, more than other fighters, but I'm not going to let that get in the way of me giving credit where it's due, you know? It's like this whole Daniel Dubois quitting thing. When Don Charles came out and basically called Derek Chisora a sellout for saying that Daniel Dubois quit. This is what's, you know, ruining the black race world. I mean, are you having a laugh, Don Charles? Like, give it a rest. That type of tribalism, I mean, I'm not even sure whether Don Charles is being tribal when he's saying all that, or whether he's just being opportunistic, just finding any way to strike back at Derek Chisora by saying anything, right? But there are some people who say, no, you're supposed to stay on code. You're not supposed to criticize one of your own. To hell with all that, bro. This is a boxing channel. I don't care if the guy's black, white, Chinese, Indian. I don't care where he's from or what he looks like. If I think he quit in a fight, I'm going to say he quit in a fight. People are not coming here to hear me, you know, censor my words because I'm staying on code with my particular demographic. And even if he's British, right? And it's a British fighter going up against an American fighter, I'm not just going to blindly act like a British fighter didn't quit if he did against an American. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'll be selling myself short to be doing that. Yeah? I'll be selling myself short. When Kell Brook fought Errol Spence, he quit. It's okay. Do you know what I mean? Man had a fractured eye socket. I'm not saying he's a coward for quitting. I'm not saying I would have continued in the same position. But at the end of the day, there are many other fighters who have continued with fractured eye sockets. Yeah? In a way, being one of them. He had a fractured eye socket against Donaire and went the whole way, right? The fight went the distance, the first fight they had. Many fighters. I remember a guy back in the days, Kid Dynamite, Danny Romero. He fought a whole fight with a fractured eye socket. I mean, people fight entire contests with fractured eye sockets. Paulie Malignaggi did it. I'm not saying it's a smart thing to do. You know what I mean? All I'm telling you is some fighters will carry on with a fractured eye socket and they know something's not right. Their eye looks all mashed up. Whereas other fighters will quit in that situation. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that I'm just comparing certain fighters to other fighters. It is what it is. Some fighters are just crazy brave, or other people might describe it as crazy stupid. Describe it how you want. Shout out to D-Man, he says, it's a problem in Africa voting for a politician because they are the same tribe without concern for policies. Yeah, that's the same everywhere, really. They call that demagoguery. Yeah, when people are just voting for the lowest common denominator, you know, that they have with a politician, rather than the policies. You know, identity politics, they call it. Yeah, identity politics. People are voting based upon the identity and the image of the politician rather than the actual policies. And similar to that would be like one policy parties, a party that comes along and they just got one policy. And okay, but what's your policy on the economy? What's your policy on education? What's your policy on healthcare? What? Oh no, we've only got one policy. It might be immigration. It's like, we can't vote you in when you've got only one flipping policy and it's immigration. There's a lot more to do in running a country than just that, you know? But yeah, shout out to D-Man for the super chat. Politics, this is why I don't get involved in politics, man. It's just, it's an ish show. I'm not into it. Shout out to you. Shout out to Cash for the super chat. He says, Fury lying, he gave his purse away, is the most disgusting lie, almost evil. That's when he lost a supporter in me, even before the lineal lie. I want to say the worst thing I've heard Tyson Fury say, because that was bad, don't get it twisted, saying he gave away his purse and all that. I mean, come on, bro. We know you didn't do that. I want to say the worst thing that Partridge did, the most low down, classless thing he ever did, was after he lost the first Usyk fight in the ring. He said they only gave it to Usyk because of the conflict in his country. I mean, to this day, Partridge has given Usyk no credit whatsoever. Whenever they've even asked Partridge, what impressed you about Usyk in those fights? He'll say, nothing impressed me. There's nothing special about him. This is what he continues saying. Man gives Usyk no credit at all and blames the whole thing on there being a conflict in Usyk's country, and it's basically like a sympathy vote. Seriously, this guy has got absolutely no class whatsoever. And it's incredible that Usyk is able to rise above comments like that from Partridge. Do you know what I mean? Because Usyk hasn't come back at Partridge with any real viciousness after he said all this stuff. And maybe that's because of Usyk's faith, you know? It's like when AJ threw a tantrum in the ring after the second Usyk fight, and he threw the belts out of the ring. He started storming around in a huff. Usyk would have been well within his rights to go in on AJ over that. Do you know what I mean? He would have been well within his rights to go in on him. But Usyk actually said, it's okay, I understand, it's sports, spirits are high. I'm paraphrasing it, but this is basically what Usyk said. So, you know, I guess his faith allows him to rise above stuff which I wouldn't be rising above, I'll tell you that. If I was Usyk, I'd be going in on AJ after that carry on. And I'd be going in on Partridge even more, because at least AJ apologized, yeah? After he had his little hissy fit in the ring, he did apologize later. Whereas Partridge never apologized. You know, he's just such a classless individual, Partridge. Bitter loser. Shout out to the Real Heel for the super chat. He says, never forget when we were celebrating with joy when Partridge beat Vlad. How times have changed. Usyk has forever scared that man, and rightly so indeed. I always like to remind people of that from time to time. Because I was bigging up Partridge to the maximum. Not just when he beat Vlad, in the run-up to beating Vlad. And even shortly after beating Vlad. I was bigging him up to the maximum. But as I always say, no fighter is below praise and no fighter is above criticism on this channel. And unfortunately, Partridge crossed over to the dark side. I mean, maybe he was always a Sith Lord in the making, you know? But he fully crossed over to the dark side after that Klitschko win. And he's never come back since. He's not like Luke Skywalker. Luke Partridge is the Luke that stayed with the Sith. You know, it's a curious thing with Usyk, but I guess it's like, as I've said in many videos over the past few years, there's a prejudice against cruiserweights who move up to heavyweight. Unless you're like a massive puncher at cruiserweight, then there's this just like automatic assumption that you're not supposed to be beating the big heavyweights. You know, it seems like most fans don't like it and they don't believe a cruiserweight who's not a massive puncher can step up and do it. And they come out with all these different reasons why Usyk is not supposed to be successful against the big men. The first one was, oh, you know, AJ wasn't properly prepared and he'll put it right in the rematch. And this was just a blip, the same as Ruiz. Then he did it twice and it's like, oh, well, maybe AJ's no good. Then Usyk went in there and beat Daniel Dubois. Oh, well, you know, Dubois is just a young guy. He quit against Joyce. Okay, Usyk beat him again. No big deal. Then he finally gets to fight Partridge the first time. And people are like, oh, okay, Tyson Fury wasn't in the same kind of shape that he was in previously. He'll be in better shape. You guys remember going into the Usyk rematch, right? The Usyk-Partridge rematch. I want to say it was still 50-50 in terms of who people thought would win. In fact, I reckon among the boxing establishment, it was still majority picking Partridge. It's like, what on earth is going on here? Nobody wanted to believe that Usyk was the best heavyweight in the world. There was this denial for years, particularly in the British boxing media, but even in America. People were scratching their heads and they couldn't understand what was going on. Or maybe this era is just rubbish then, because he shouldn't be champion. He's only a cruiserweight. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, Usyk really had to fight for his flowers, bro. I mean, unbelievable. But I want to say it's partly down to the fact he's not from the Anglo-sphere, because, you know, boxing is dominated by the Anglo-sphere, particularly heavyweight boxing. But also I want to say it's partly down to the fact that he's a natural cruiserweight who's not known as like a big knockout puncher. He's not like a David Haye when he moved up from cruiserweight. Usyk was known as a technician, and people just couldn't understand how a small guy who's not like a huge knockout puncher could be beating all these big guys. You know, it's as if it's not supposed to happen. No, it is supposed to happen. Why not? A shout out to Jack Trussler for the super chat. He says, which Star Wars character would you say AJ is? Now that's a good one. Which Star Wars character would I say AJ is? That's a good one. Which Star Wars character would AJ be? Give me some suggestions, because I'm trying to think now. Could AJ be Mace Windu? Don't know if he's that powerful. AJ's that powerful to be Mace Windu. He's definitely not Yoda. He's not Palpatine. He's not. He'd definitely be a Jedi, right? He wouldn't be a Sith. So we can't say that he's Dooku or Darth Maul. Who would you guys suggest that AJ would be as a Star Wars character? What, Jar Jar Binks? No, he's not Jar Jar Binks. A shout out to Jay for the super chat. He says, Hatman, what combo of fighters have the most similar styles, past, present, or past, e.g. Foreman and Joyce? Okay, I see what you're saying. Let me see now. I would say Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson. There was a strong similarity there because Muhammad Ali basically admitted that he copied Sugar Ray Robinson's style. You could draw similarities, right? A comparison between James Toney and Floyd Mayweather Jr., although they're not extremely similar. There were similarities to the styles, right? James Toney, pound for pound, had quicker hands than Mayweather. Not actually quicker hands. I'm talking about pound for pound relative to the other fighters in his division. And he was more of a combination puncher and he was more aggressive. But they both had that Philly shell, similar defense, both like to counter with a straight right hand. So there was some similarity there. Who else has similarities? I'm trying to think of some present guys that I can compare to the past. You've already said Joyce Foreman. You know, the biomechanics of Joyce and Foreman is similar. Who else is there now? You could even compare somebody like I was going to say Michael Hunter and Jimmy Young, but nah, not really. I think Jimmy Young was a lot more neat biomechanically and just technique-wise than Hunter. Hunter can look a little sloppy after a couple rounds. That's an interesting question, though. All right, my tab is frozen as usual. I'm just going to refresh this because it's skitzing out right now. Here we go, back in business. Shout out to Lawrence King for the super chat. He says, I just arrived to the stream. Who are we saying is above Fury for the number 2 of this generation? Well, what I'm saying, basically, if I didn't, and I maybe didn't clarify it to the rest of the chat earlier on, I'm saying the number 2 spot is vacant, personally. I'm saying it's vacant, or at least if you want to put AJ there, you put AJ there with an asterisk. Yeah? I'm saying if we care that much about a definitive number 2 of the generation, then Fury and AJ need to fight each other. Me, I don't particularly care about who the number 2 is. Yeah? It's as if the number 2 spot has been created or is being, hyped up purely for the benefit of Luke Partridge. Yeah, purely for his benefit. Because you don't really get this discussion much in other eras, but who was the number 2 of that era? Nobody really cares, yeah? But because Partridge's feelings are so badly hurt, his minions like Gad are coming up with this number 2 spot, the consolation prize for him. Oh, he's definitely the number 2. How did Gad say it? He's definitely the number 2 heavyweight of this generation. I'm messing up my Gad impression tonight. He's definitely, oh yeah, extraordinary. He's an extraordinary character, Tyson Fury. Yeah. He's definitely the number 2 of his, unquestionably. He's extraordinary. Shout out to Lawrence King for the super chat. He says, I agree the number 2 doesn't matter because the number 1 is so clear, but I do think Fury is number 2 of this era. Could also be a case for AJ. So let me lay out why I'm saying he's definitely not number 2. He beat Klitschko 10 years ago. Since that time, fought Wilder 3 times. That's the same man. So you only get credit for beating one man. And Dylan White, whose chin was absolute China and got knocked out by Povetkin a couple fights earlier. So if you're looking at who Partridge actually beat, I don't see any case that he's the number 2 at all. I think you can leave that number 2 slot vacant until Partridge and AJ actually fight each other. In fact, let's have a round robin. Let's have Partridge and AJ and Dubois fight a little round robin between each other. Chuck Joseph Parker in. Yeah, never mind Partridge with this silly thing about not fighting his mate Parker. No, chuck him in there. If he was that much of a mate of Joseph Parker, then why is he talking about fighting Usyk a third time when he's already had 2 cracks at that, and not bigging up his mate Parker to go fight Usyk instead? Why is he not doing that if he's so much of a good friend? So, yeah, big up Lawrence King, but no, I can't see a case for Partridge being number 2. Other people are saying Parker might be number 2. They need to have a round robin. Let's get Partridge, AJ, Parker against, who else did I mention now? Partridge, AJ, Parker, and who? Dubois, yeah. Dubois, Parker, AJ, Fury. Let those fight each other. Let the winners of those fight each other again. And then the winner of that can go on to fight Usyk if he's still about. That will decide who the number 2 is. That will decide who the number 2 is. Shout out to Lawrence King. He said, I remember watching Usyk versus Chaz and Chisora, and I never thought he'd beat AJ, let alone do it twice. Then Fury, just a crazy achievement in 8 fights as a heavyweight. Yeah, he took people by surprise, you know? And that's why he was able to get all those big fights. Because AJ, although he knew Usyk was good, I don't think he realized how good he was. I don't think Hearn realized how good he was. So he snuck in under the radar, and that's how he was able to get those opportunities. And once he had a seat at the table, you know, beating AJ a couple of times, there was no getting rid of him. Now he's got several belts, you know, so Partridge tried his best to long him off and kick the can down the road so the fight wouldn't have to happen. But Usyk went in there and bashed up Daniel Dubois and applied the pressure until Partridge gave in and had to take the fight. There was another bit of boxing news, actually, which flashed through my mind when I was talking about Partridge a few seconds ago. Can people try to jog my memory? What boxing news has come out over the past few days? Maybe the past 24 hours. There was something else I wanted to talk about. Now, it weren't Jaron Ennis. Was it the PED thing with the guy that beat Yafai? That's pretty scandalous. That was crazy. Now, I've talked about the Tank retiring thing, talked about the Muhammad Ali Reform Act reform, I think 2 streams ago, talked about that. Mr. Grandy says Canelo actually being on PEDs because somebody else said Crawford possibly being on PEDs or potentially. What's that based on? Because that guy that beat Yafai, I forget his name already now, he failed 2 PED tests on the day of the fight in consecutive fights. That is crazy. That's literally crazy. Where was a ban? Like, so he failed a PED test in the fight before he fought Yafai, on the day of the fight. And then he was still able to go ahead and fight Yafai and then failed a test. I mean, people, that's insane. For it to happen on the day of the fight once is bad enough. But twice? And there was no ban for him? Like, what's going on? Shout out to Lawrence King for the super chat. He says, one thing I will say out of respect for Turkey, he clearly wants Fury to win, and he could have easily fixed the results out there and didn't. Think about how many crazy judging decisions in the UK and US. And this is something other people have said with regards to Riyadh season cards. Other than the Hamza Shiraz Adames scorecard, and Shiraz is clearly a big favorite of Turkey, right? Other than that, the scoring in Saudi, as far as I can remember, for most fights has been very good. I don't recall in them the ones in Saudi Arabia any dodgy decisions. Can you guys think of any? It was only that Hamza Shiraz Adames fight. Other than that, there have been really solid scorecards out there. Rodriguez, thank you, the guy that failed the test against Yafai and also the fight before Yafai. I mean, what is going on with all that? Shout out to President Brush for the super chat. He says, how do you rate Ben Shalom's career? Not very highly would be the answer, because he's been given everything on a silver platter. God only knows how he even got the opportunity to be the exclusive promoter on Sky in the first place, when this guy had basically no background in boxing. He was in his 20s, never heard of him before in my life. There were countless small hall promoters with good, solid track records who didn't get the opportunity. Why did Ben Shalom get the opportunity? Bizarre, right? So he gets an opportunity which he obviously hasn't earned. And what does he do with it? He, according to many fighters, was very unprofessional. You're obviously not going to hear too many good things from him, about him, from his rivals. That's natural. But he is shy of the media. And that's always a problem when you're a boxing promoter, when you're shy of the media. A boxing promoter is supposed to love the media. Yeah? But Ben Shalom's very shy of the media. Unless he's got a fight, a show coming up, he'll do some interviews on Fight Week, and that's about it. Other than that, this guy just disappears for months on end in between shows. I don't rate that. He did put on a few decent fights, right? A few decent shows during his time on Sky. But overall, I'd probably give him a C-, something like that. Maybe even a D-. Yeah, let's call it a D-. I don't think he did very well, considering everything was laid out on a platter for him. So, shout out to President Brush. Shout out to Deep Random Thinker. He says, Usyk battered Partridge twice. 9-3 with KO, 9-3 with knockdown, 10-2. Yeah, battered Partridge twice and lives rent-free in Partridge's head. Shout out to Lawrence King for the super chat. He says, so weird Ben Shalom getting the opportunity off the bat. I wonder if he's part of some kind of group of people that is favored by the media. I don't know. Yeah, that's too much of a hot potato for me to cover on this stream. Let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. But shout out to Lawrence King. all I can tell you is that it's inexplicable how Ben Shalom got the opportunity, bro. Like, how on earth did that happen, bro? How on earth did that come about? All right, so we got Encircled disagreeing with Reinhard Schneider. Big up Encircled, but I actually agree with Reinhard Schneider. In that Parker AJ fight, The referee was horrible. He kept on jumping in whenever Parker mainly was trying to unload up close and breaking him up. What on earth was all that about? Because obviously the only chance Parker really had, the way the fight was going, was to drag AJ into an inside fight. Not that he would have necessarily won inside, we don't know. But that was his chance because he was basically frozen on the end of AJ's jab. When he did get close, the referee's bizarre actions where he's like, no, it's as if you're not allowed to punch if you're too close or something. It's as if he invented a new rule for that fight where Parker was not allowed to punch from too close. That was a messed up refereeing performance, in my view. Very messed up. Okay, and Circle says, Parker had times when he got inside and did nothing at all when he got there. Parker hasn't shown to be a good inside since either. That's a fair rebuttal. Yeah, Parker hasn't proven to be particularly effective on the inside, all right? I have to admit that. Nevertheless, and yeah, perhaps there were moments when Parker did get inside and the referee didn't break them, but there was also plenty of moments when he got inside and they did break them, for just no apparent reason other than protecting AJ. Let's be real. But maybe AJ didn't need the protection. I guess that's what you're saying. And perhaps he didn't. Tony T says, has your view changed about White versus Itama? Seeing White coming in shape, it seems. Yeah, in the interview on IFL, he appears to be very slim in the face. But I've been catfished by so many heavyweights over the years, particularly the likes of Andy Ruiz. I don't want to fall for any catfishing with these damn heavyweights, right? So let's just see what he actually weighs when he gets on the scales. He's definitely going to be training like it's Last Chance Saloon. And I'm sure he's going to be spirited for a few rounds. But he's not going to be able to keep it up. Dylan White has always been somebody that lacks natural coordination. So he'll keep his construct, he'll keep his technique together for 2, 3, 4 rounds max. And after that, he's going to start getting sloppy. And you got a guy in there like Moses Itama who's got very, very nice coordination, nice athleticism, far superior to Dylan White. And he's like, what is he, 18 years younger or something? 17 years younger? Itama's actually younger than Dylan White's son. Did you guys know that? Moses Itama is younger than Dylan White's oldest son. So, no, I haven't changed my mind. I think Dylan White's going to be spirited for a few rounds, but Itama's still going to take him out inside 7. Shout out to Lawrence King for the super chat. He says, can you remember the last time in heavyweight history that we have what we have now, where there's the number one is this far ahead of everyone else? If so, when was it? Well, I'm not necessarily convinced that Usyk is that far ahead of everyone else. Yeah? He's beaten 3 guys in world championship fights. Styles make fights. Boxing is rock, paper, scissors. Okay, he had the styles to beat those 3 guys. He hasn't run through the rest of the division. So I'm not personally convinced that he's like leagues and leagues above everyone, whereby nobody can give him a tough fight. I saw enough in that Dubois rematch to convince me that Usyk is really starting to slow down now. He was doing things in that fight. Some people think it was by choice. I don't think it was by choice. I think it's because he's slowing down. He was doing things in that fight like standing in the corner, blocking shots on his gloves, like Marco Hook or something. Usyk always would prefer to, use his feet to get out the way or use head movement to evade punches. But several times against Dubois, he just stood in the corner and let Dubois wail away for a second or two before he moved off. And I was like, that's not the Usyk of old. This is what happened to Muhammad Ali when he started losing his legs. He spent loads of time on the ropes and in the corners. So I don't think Usyk is as head and shoulders personally above everybody as the general consensus of him would lead us to believe, right? And somebody made a comment maybe a couple of weeks ago in a live stream when they said that Usyk's decline has basically been masked by Partridge's decline. Yeah? Because he went in there and he beat Partridge. But Partridge is on the slide himself, you know? It's just that, you know, Usyk is still that little bit, bit better than Partridge. He was able to get the wins over him. And he got a win over Dubois. That kind of throws what I've just said into question. But he beat Dubois the first time. And Usyk is a guy that downloads data. So even though he did beat Dubois the second time, it wasn't as clean a win. Yeah, he got touched more. He got maneuvered into positions where he was pinned in corners and on the ropes and stuff like that. Even the knockout occurred when Usyk got pinned in the corner. How many fights have you seen Usyk get pinned in the corner before? I mean, he got pinned in the corner by Dubois. He tucked up and he came back with counters and down went Daniel Dubois. So the fact he's getting maneuvered into these positions now, to me, speaks to Father Time catching up with him. Because he never used to allow himself to get maneuvered into them positions. Do you know what I mean? So that's my take on it anyway. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps he fights on for, 2 more years and fights 5 guys, 5 of the top contenders, and totally washes all of them. We'll see. But my perception, personally, is that he isn't necessarily that far ahead of everybody. Because again, styles make fights. Galaxy Edit says, Usyk said he's got 1 fight left, and I hope he sticks to it, to be honest, because I would like to see him retire undefeated. I'd like to see him retire undefeated because he's not in his prime anymore. For him to lose now, I wouldn't want that to take away from what he's done so far, the legacy he's built so far. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want it to take away from his legacy. So it'd be a shame. If it was a young Usyk, if he was 32, I'd be saying, hell yeah, carry on. Let's see if you can, get 15 heavyweight title fights, title wins under your belt. Yeah, let's see that. All right, so I guess Reinhard Schneider is a Fury fanboy. Keeping that. So what, you're butthurt by the name Partridge? Were you butthurt when Partridge and all his fans were calling AJ Femi all the time? His name's not Anthony, it's Femi. Were you complaining about that? I doubt it. But you're complaining because we're calling him Partridge. The double standards are incredible. Here we have a guy in Luke Partridge who hates on everybody. You've got no problem with Partridge giving no credit to Usyk then? Reinhard, you've got no problem with Partridge giving no credit to Usyk. You don't call Partridge a hater for what he's saying to Usyk, do you? You never call Partridge a hater when, during his 3 years out on a drugs ban, he was literally slagging off Anthony Joshua every day on Twitter. Every single day, just about. You didn't call him a hater, did you? So what's all this selective outrage then? When, Partridge and his fans can go around calling people names, but when somebody gives it back to him, oh no, you're hating on Partridge. Man, give it a rest. The man shouldn't be giving it if he can't take it. Same goes for his fans. His fans give it the most. Partridge fans have been giving it to the AJs of the world and the Usyks and many other Partridge rivals. Yeah? Literally the biggest culprits. But as soon as they get it back, they want to start crying. Like, come on. Call it, oh, you're hating on Partridge. Think about how many people Partridge has hated on. And his fans have hated on. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. And this is why we're going to continue using the name Partridge. Because it upsets you guys. Winds you up. Huh? Shout out to GMS Nightmare for the super chat. He says, how does Andy Ruiz do against Usyk if he can improve his foot speed? I mean, that's a big if, because he's not going to improve his foot speed. I don't think he'd do that well, to be honest. I don't think, from what I saw in the Luis Ortiz fight, I don't think he handles southpaws very well. I don't think he handles southpaws very well at all. He had some good success early against Luis Ortiz, who's nowhere near as good as Usyk. You know, landed that very fast right-hand counter. But, nah, I reckon Usyk washes Andy Ruiz, to be fair. I think he washes him. Shout out to Striker for the super chat. Partridge is the second best heavyweight of his generation of all time. Partridge is the greatest second best heavyweight of his generation of all time. That's the consolation prize I guess they're lining up for him. Okay, Reinhard Schneider, you're just talking. I'm lying. Lying about what? I don't take kindly to be called a liar. What am I lying about? Tell me what I'm lying about now, so I don't block you. Tell me specifically tell me what I've lied about before I get you out of here. You're not going to call me a liar, yeah? What have I lied about? Tell me specifically what I've lied about, you joker. Come up here talking rubbish. What have I lied about? I ain't going to have people saying stuff like that about me that's not true. What have I lied about? You better clarify exactly what you're talking about here. I lied. Lied about what? His name is not Luke. Did I say that his name is definitely Luke Partridge? No, I didn't, you donut. I never said his name is definitely Luke Partridge. I said that I got it from a forum. I never said it was true. I never said I could verify any of it. You joker. I'm not lying. I've said it countless times that I got that name Luke Partridge from a forum. It's a nickname for him, bro. I need to get upset. Dear, oh dear. I'm not lying. I never lied about nothing. There's not been one video or live stream where I've come up here and said his real name is Luke Partridge. Never said that. His second name is Luke. We know that. Yeah. And early on in his career, when he fought Steve Cunningham, he was announced, or the one of the commentators called him Luke Tyson Fury. That's a fact when he fought Steve Cunningham. But in terms of the Partridge thing, like I say, that was in a boxing forum. And I think I've heard Peter Fury say that they have partridges in their family. I'm not saying Tyson Fury was born Luke Partridge. I've never said that. Keep making... So you're butthurt by the Partridge thing. That's all it is. You're butthurt by us calling him Luke Partridge. But you were never butthurt when people were calling AJ Femi all the time. Or the stiff bodybuilder or any of this stuff. It's only when we talk about Partridge that you get upset. Why? Why is there a double standard? When Partridge is running around calling everybody every name under the sun, it's fine. Like, come on. Why is it fine for Partridge and his fans to call people stuff? No, AJ's name is Anthony. Yeah? If you're saying AJ's name is Femi, then we can say that Luke is his name and not Tyson. Yes, it's a middle name. So you're just being hypocritical. If you're saying AJ's name is Femi, okay, well, he's called Luke then. It's not Tyson, it's Luke, because you're using his middle name, same way. Here you go, Luke. Luke Partridge. and here's the crucial thing. The name Luke Partridge, the name Luke Partridge is so funny. It's like the ultimate antidote to Fury fanboys. Yeah? I've noticed it really winds them up and upsets them. You call him Luke Partridge. that name has some kind of power to it. Luke Partridge, dear oh dear oh dear. Oh my God. Shout out to the Real Heel. He says, don't be giving into the dark side, Hatman. These Fury fanboys will say anything to worship Lord Partridge Sidious. Somebody saying, Reinhard once again, AJ was called Femi by his friends. How do you know? Who told you that? Luke was called Luke by people that he knew as well. You can't find an Anthony Joshua fight where they announce him as Femi Joshua. So where's all this Femi stuff coming from? It was Partridge pushing all the Femi stuff. Yeah? Partridge was the one, oh, he's not really called Anthony, it's Femi, Big Femi, and all this kind of stuff. Well, okay, you're Luke. Yeah, Partridge is Luke. He got called Luke by people that knew him. And here's the thing. I never even cared. People call Anthony Joshua Femi. Okay, cool. Call him Femi. I don't give a damn what people call him, right? But I'm just showing you the hypocrisy of the Partridge fanboys. When they get a taste of their own medicine, they get really upset, particularly because it's such a powerful name, right? It's powerful in its comedic value. Yeah, Luke Partridge is a funny name. Okay, Reinhard, you're just talking rubbish now. No, Partridge called him Femi as well. It's not one person that did it. And by the way, Dylan White also called Partridge Luke. Yeah, he called AJ Femi, but he also called Partridge Luke. So get your facts straight, you donut. Your facts straight, Partridge fanboy. All butthurt over a little catchy name. Like, grow up, man. Warren Williams says, I found it funny when Frank Warren said AJ was a roadman. He said, Daniel Dubois was a homeboy. He won't be on the road. I mean, was AJ really a roadman? I don't know. Guess he sold a bit of weed. Does that qualify as a roadman? I don't know. Did he really have roadmen up in Watford? Watford ain't exactly the roads, bro. But, I don't know. What's the definition of a roadman? When I was growing up, I don't know whether you would class someone like AJ as a roadman. Yeah, light roadman. He's like a roadman light, you know? Barely touching the roads. Shout out to Muraz, man, for the super chat. He says, don't get the panties in the twist over another man. Shout out to Muraz, man. Yeah, those mean streets of Watford, you know? The mean streets of Watford. Shout out to Curtis Moore. Ben says, Hatman, did you like the film Kidulthood? Not at all. I thought it was trash. I thought Kidulthood was trash. Somebody says, selling weed ain't a road, man. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, there's uni students that shot weed. So, I mean, them uni students road, man. No, I mean, I don't know, man. In my day, being a roadman was a lot more than just, selling a bit of green. It's a lot deeper than that. Indeed, Casa. Roadman is basically an urban chav at this point. Definitely no yardman from the 90s. Now, back in the days, if you were doing road, you were into some serious stuff doing road, being a roadman. See, that's what I'm hoping for. The Real Heel says, Fury's next opponent needs to address him as Luke Partridge at the presser. Imagine the meltdown that would occur. And I think it would be a fantastic bit of psychological warfare for them to call him Partridge. I think it would get under his skin and disturb his mind. Yeah? Your mum's fat, Schneider. How about that? Yeah, your mum's fat. And go suck your mum. Not fat, man. Man's not even fat. I'm literally in shape. This guy's calling me something that I'm not even. Yeah, your mum's fat. Go suck your mama. Partridge fanboy. Suck your mama. So what I'm doing is working then. What I'm doing with this Partridge name is actually having the desired effect. This is what we want. We're trying to disturb these people. We're trying to disturb these people because they're propping up Partridge's lies. Yeah? They're propping up Partridge's lies. So we need to be a thorn in their brain. Indeed, Kyle. Fat man to a non-fat man is crazy. It's a madness, bro. Rhubarb says, I joined this live at a mad moment. Okay, we got another incoherent comment here. Let's get this guy out of here. Bye. Another Partridge fanboy. I think the Partridge fanboys are actually filtering in now because of the title here. I think that's what it is. Because there was another Partridge pom-pom waver a second ago there. Exactamundo says, Schneider is 100% Fury's alt. Let's see how many of these flies we can attract to the fly trap here. Fury fanboys assemble. That's right. Yeah, let's get back to calling him Partridge. Shout out to Ocean Blue. He says, be hilarious if AJ called him Partridge. I know he watches your videos. Bro, I need to change the thumbnail from Fury to Partridge. I'll do that after the stream. This Partridge has got to go viral now. I've been trying to make Partridge the name go viral for a while. Warren Williams says, this is the last stop, Brixton. All change Hatman has switched. Shout out to Warren. Island Grill says, Hatman, what boxer evokes the most fanboys' call to arms when you critique their fighter? I would say historically probably Mike Tyson. But in the past, 15 years, you'd have to say like Mayweather and maybe Partridge. Pacquiao as well. Yeah, Pacquiao was another one. People are saying Canelo, but Canelo might be the number one, but because most of us are not from the Spanish-speaking world, a lot of Canelo fans are going on to Spanish-speaking videos and not necessarily my videos, so maybe I'm not really feeling the full brunt, do you know what I mean, from the Canelo fanboys? Because I've never had that much of an issue with Canelo fanboys on my channel, do you know what I mean? And I have criticized them a lot over the years, but I've never really got like crazy backlash from Canelo fanboys to the extent that I got from Partridge fanboys or Mayweather fanboys. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, every big fighter's got their fanboys. AJ's absolutely got fanboys. But in terms of like levels, some groups of fanboys are more prolific than others. And the Mayweather fanboys were crazy for years, bro. The Mayweather fanboys was something else. I was going back and forth with Mayweather fanboys damn near every video at one point. It was so absurd, you know? Yeah, Beyonce Wilder fanboys were the most delusional because they believed all these ridiculous claims about him being poisoned and egg weights in the gloves and all this silly carry-on. The referee was in on it. What a load of nonsense. The Real Heel says it's definitely Tyson. Old heads at my workplace can't fathom when you even try to compare modern fighters to him. It's ridiculous. Like he's unbeatable. Indeed, yeah. I would say historically the Mike Tyson fanboys are probably the worst because let me explain to you what Mike Tyson fanboys are like. And they are nerds, yeah. Mike Tyson fanboys are usually weird nerds. Not all of them, but a large proportion of them. Let me explain to you what Mike Tyson fanboys are like. I've had debates with Mike Tyson fanboys over the years, right? And they quote people like Kevin Rooney and Customato as if they are religious people quoting from a holy book. As if what Customato and Kevin Rooney said was like the word of God or something. Seriously. So, for example, they always make out as though if Mike hadn't left Kevin Rooney, he would never have lost the fight. And I'm like, what are you basing that on? And they're like, well, Kevin Rooney said if Mike had stayed with him, he would have gone 100-0. Of course Kevin Rooney's going to say that, you donut. Because he was bent out of shape that Mike left, that Mike fired him. So of course he's going to say, oh, if he'd stayed with me, he would have gone 100-0. I mean, dear, oh dear. How is that any kind of proof? Yeah, the Mike Tyson fanboys are weird, bro. Very weird. The weirdest fanboy I've ever seen who actually had a YouTube channel was a Mike Tyson fanboy. I wish his channel was still up. I would find some way to direct you guys towards his channel without receiving a community guideline strike for bullying or whatever, cyber harassment. Because this guy was the most bizarre fanboy you have ever seen. I swear to God, you will never see a more bizarre fanboy than this Mike Tyson fanboy that I'm speaking about now. He was like a middle-aged guy, English guy, who was totally obsessed with Mike Tyson, right? I mean, he looked like, I don't know, a 48-year-old guy who spends most of his time in the pub. He had like tattoos on his forearms, and I don't know whether he was a bit simple or what, right? He had like kind of graying hair, but he shaved the hair around the sides a little bit to make it look like Mike Tyson's hairstyle in, the mid-80s. This guy was like a proper deep fanboy. And in his room, in his bedroom, it looked like, he had like a heavy bag taped to the wall with all the number combinations that Customato used to teach to Mike Tyson. Bro, this was crazy. This was crazy, bro. And his impression of the Mike Tyson Customato peekaboo style was the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. Yeah? The head movement was totally exaggerated and he took it all very seriously. To him, none of this was funny. I wish that channel had survived. His channel ended up being taken down, I think, for copyright. But he got into a beef with another guy who's a fan of Mike Tyson. He's some Pacific Islander guy, yeah? And he does like Mike Tyson videos on YouTube and also on Instagram, yeah? In fact, you might be able to find him. Let me look up this guy, because this guy did a response to the crazy Mike Tyson fanboy I'm talking about. So it was basically like a Mike Tyson fanboy war between the guy in his bedroom and this Pacific Islander guy. And he started stalking the Pacific Islander Mike Tyson fan, saying that you've got this wrong and this technical thing that Mike Tyson did wasn't like this, and you're teaching the public lies because Mike didn't do that, and he put his foot in this position when he hit Michael Spinks, and he didn't. It was the deepest, weirdest thing you've ever heard in your life from fanboys. Like a Mike Tyson fanboy civil war. Absolutely insane. In fact, let me get this guy's channel up so you can actually go to his channel and you might see the response that he made to this lunatic that I'm alluding to here. Let me see. Tyson tutorial boxing. What's this guy's name? Logan Brown. Okay, so there's a Pacific Islander guy. I think he's from New Zealand or Australia. He's called Logan Brown. Yeah, he's got a big channel. Let me see how many subscribers he's got. Because Mike Tyson's so popular, right? He's got over 200,000 subscribers. And he's obviously a massive Mike Tyson fan. And, he teaches his version of the Mike Tyson Customato style. And he basically got stalked for, I don't know, was it a year? By this other super duper Mike Tyson fanboy who was basically jealous that his channel is as successful as it is. And he was nitpicking and critiquing everything this guy did, sending him emails, DMing him on Instagram saying, no, you've got this bit wrong. Mike didn't dip before he would throw this particular punch. He would always shuffle his foot to the right. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. Let me see if the video's still up. No, it's not. So the video response that he did to that individual might not still be up, but yeah. The Mike Tyson fanboys, long story short, are the craziest and most extreme in my experience. Shout out to, first of all, hang on a second here. Yeah, shout out to Ocean Blue. Says, be hilarious if AJ calls him Partridge. I know he watches it. Okay, I read that one. Muraz Man, big up for the super chat. He says, fanboys going with Luke's lies of the first fight win. Indeed. That's when we need to shut all that down and nip it in the bud immediately. Shout out to Jay for the super chat. He says, what crazy things were the Floyd fanboys saying? And they were saying he was the greatest of all time and better than everybody and he was invincible. And, it was just... The Floyd fanboys were overly emotional because basically, with the Floyd fanboys, their whole thing was about race, yeah? If you were not black and you criticized Mayweather or dared to say that he wasn't the greatest of all time, you're racist. If you criticized Mayweather and you were black, then you're an Uncle Tom and you're a sellout. That was their whole shtick, basically, yeah? You were not allowed to criticize Mayweather because there was only ever a racial motive behind it as far as they were concerned. Now, not to say that there's never a racial motive for people not liking Mayweather, But to make out as though everyone who critiques Mayweather or critiques his resume has got some kind of racial motive behind it, like, give it a rest. But that was their whole shtick, yeah? If you're black and you critique Mayweather, you're some type of sellout, Uncle Tom, this and that. And if you're anything else other than black and you critique him, it's just it's racial. It's like, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. I can't do this, bro. Shout out to Dan the Man. Says James Toney versus Beterbiev, Calzaghe versus Benavidez. They're very tough matchups. I think James Toney on his day can win that fight against Beterbiev, but James Toney was very hot and cold, you know? He wouldn't have got blasted out by Beterbiev. I think we can probably mostly agree on that. He went up to heavyweight and fought much bigger, stronger, harder punching people than Artur Beterbiev and didn't get stopped. So that fight's going the distance. On his day, a prime James Toney, I reckon, would beat Beterbiev on points. At his absolute peak, with the slipping and the rolling and the countering and the coming back with shots. So I'll go with James Toney at his peak. But again, he was so hot and cold, you never knew when you were going to get a good version of him. And Calzaghe against Benavidez, God, that's a real good fight. Because both guys throw a ton of punches. For now, I'll say Calzaghe. But I might change my mind if Benavidez continues to, win big fights and keep looking good. Shout out to Dan the Man. Shout out to Ray, Carl Brown, Amori for the super chat. He says, I'm not going to lie though. I thought Fury was going to be this generation's great heavyweight, but then he started conning us with BS and is not even number 2 now. Yeah, same for me. I never had it in for Partridge in the first place. I was never somebody that was wishing for the downfall of the Gypsy King from day one, not at all. I was very happy when he beat Vladimir Klitschko because he ended the dark age for heavyweight boxing. So I'm like you. I had high hopes for Luke Partridge, a.k.a. Tyson Fury. But unfortunately, he let me down in the most horrible way. He let boxing down. He let the fans who once believed in him down in the most horrible way and just turned into a con man. That's what he did. He just turned into a con man. It was all very disappointing. I always compare him to Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight, because Harvey Dent seems like the savior of Gotham City. This knight in shining armor, takes down the mob, Rico and all this stuff. And that's what Luke Partridge, a.k.a. Tyson Fury, was like when he beat Klitschko. But just like Harvey Dent, he quickly turned into the villain. Harvey Two-Face. He quickly turned into the villain. That's who Luke Partridge turned out to be. He turned out to be Harvey Two-Face, not Batman. We thought he was Batman. He wore the Batman costume for the Klitschko fight and all that, but he was never Batman. He was always just Harvey Two-Face. So shout out to Ray. D-Man, big up. He says, do you think Calzaghe would have beaten a prime Roy Jones? In my opinion, definitely not. No way. I do not see Calzaghe beating a prime Roy Jones at all. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, Partridge became the very thing he swore to destroy. He was the chosen one. He was like Anakin Skywalker. There you go. Yeah, he was like Anakin Skywalker. In the volcano where Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like you were supposed to be the one. You're supposed to be the chosen one, Anakin. I forget the exact lines he uses. You guys know the scene. You were supposed to be the chosen one. What happened to you, Anakin? Yeah, that's Partridge. You got turned over to the dark side. Indeed, exactamundo. Usyk has the high ground too. Usyk does have the high ground. Huh? Just like Obi-Wan Kenobi did in that scene. Or somebody saying, Muhammad Ali wouldn't have approved of people being called by their previous names. I don't care what Muhammad Ali would have thought, to be honest. I don't give a damn what Ali would have thought. You know? I mean, Ali was a great fighter, charismatic and everything, but it's not like he was some kind of model citizen. What kind of Muslim was Muhammad Ali, you know? Just being real. During his career, was he really conducting himself as a Muslim? Smashing chicks all over the place, boozing, you know? Muhammad Ali. Yeah. Yeah, Muhammad Ali was a gallus, you know, chicks all over the place. Drinking, do you know what I mean? Like boozing. Ali used to booze a lot. Man used to booze a lot. Shout out to the real heel. He says, you either die of fury or you live long enough. All right, that's a comment of the night. You either die of fury or you live long enough to see yourself become a partridge. Yeah. That's what happened. There you go. He lived long enough to see himself become a partridge. There's nothing that disarms Fury fanboys more than that partridge name. It kills them, bro. Shout out to Andy P, because there's an Andy in the chat and his surname is Partridge. There's something about that name that just diffuses Partridge, you know? Got more. We got another Partridge fanboy crying here. Okay. Keep them coming. Like flies to the fly trap. What do you call those things that they have in like Chinese takeaways? You know the fly buzzer thing on the wall? Where it's got like the fluorescent light in it that's usually blue. And it attracts the flies and it like electrocutes them. What are those things called? Electric shocker, electric fly trap. Is that what they're called? Where do you buy those things? I don't think I've ever seen one sold in a shop anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Where you get them things from? A fly zapper. Okay, they're called zappers. I see. B&Q do them. Okay. Hardware store. Huh. I've been into many hardware stores, but I don't recall ever seeing one. Yeah. Oh yeah, somebody said Amazon. Everything's on Amazon, isn't it? So I'm sure you get one on there. But yeah, I'm attracting the Partridge fanboys to the fly zapper. Come on in. But yeah, in the UK, you generally see them in Chinese takeaways, don't you? I don't recall ever seeing one of them fly zappers in like a kebab shop or a Caribbean takeaway or a fish and chip shop. It's always in Chinese takeaways. You guys notice that? A Chinese takeaway will always have a fly zapper on the wall. Yeah, the bug zapper. Shout out to Jackie Boy Johnson. Jelly Mold says, we have him at work in the warehouse near the doors. Okay. Let me make sure I got all the super chats here. Yep, got them all. Big up the real heel for that last. That was a crazy super chat there. Live long enough to see yourself become a partridge. Big up Galaxy Edits. He says, Andy Ruiz is done. I won't be surprised if he never fights again. Yeah, me neither. God, Andy Ruiz has been such a disappointment, hasn't he? What a disappointment he's been. As soon as he got the bag from the AJ fights, he just imploded. Wayne Towers says, zappers are used in civilized places, so not kebab shops. All right, shots fired. It just so happens that my favorite type of takeaway in the UK is kebab shops, hands down. Love me a kebab shop. What? And I've said this many times before, the reason I love Turkish food in London more than any other kind of food is because them kebab shops give you the most amount of meat as opposed to, you know, many other kind of takeaways where you get just loads of carbs and barely any protein. You go kebab shop and you're getting loads of protein. So shout out to the Turkish crew. There you go. Got man like Jan in the chat. Say it, Hat Man, let him know. It's all about the Turkish boss, man. Just being real. It's all about the Turkish boss, man. Yeah, real bad man. That's right. And indeed, Samir, I stay away from Jamaica. I've been staying away from Jamaican takeaways for 10 years or more. Super stingy, overpriced food in Caribbean takeaways. It's all about the Turkish boss, man. Yeah, baklava as well. That's sweet. Yeah. What Star Wars character is Dave Allen? He'd be a pretty insignificant, lowly character. Who would Dave Allen be? Chewbacca? No, he won't be Chewbacca. He can't fight as good as Chewbacca. Who would Dave Allen be? Who would Dave Allen be? Cash says Dubois is Chewbacca. That's a good shout. Yeah, it'd have to be an Ewok. There you go. R2-D2. Because R2-D2 got beat up the whole time, didn't he? That's a good shout for Dave Allen. Dave Allen is R2-D2. Cash says Han Solo is Frank Warren. You know who Frank Warren is? Frank Warren is that weird flying merchant creature who sells a young Anakin. Or yeah, did he sell a young Anakin to Obi-Wan Kenobi? The slave trading guy, yeah. Yeah, the slave trading guy. Whatever his name is, he's like a flying creature. And his Jedi mind tricks won't work on me. Yeah, that's Frank Warren. That's Frank Warren. That guy's Frank Warren. Yeah, he's Frank Warren. Don King would be Jabba the Hutt. I'm saying Don King's Jabba the Hutt because Don King was basically Frank Warren's mentor during the 90s. Yeah, Frank Warren was like Don King's understudy. So I'm saying that flying slave trader guy is Frank Warren and Jabba the Hutt is Don King. Triple R said, wouldn't Mick Hennessy be Jabba? Well, Mick Hennessy weren't successful enough to be Jabba the Hutt. What a big enough player. Exactamundo says Ben Shalom is C3PO. All right, peeps, gonna shut this stream down. It's been a good one. It's been enjoyable. Had some laughs. We've upset some fanboys, stuck it to them. Long may it continue. Shout out to everyone for joining the conversation, and a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were The Real Heel, D-Man, Ray Cole Brown Amori, Dan the Man, Jay, Mura's Man, Ocean Blue, Striker, GMS Nightman, Lawrence King, President Brush, Deep Random Thinker, Jack Trussler. I think I've said Cash, D-Man, Mr. Luca, Black Dynamite, Evil Uncle Phil, George the Last Patriot, Osas. And I always wondered, Osas, did you get that name from that Nigerian skit? I want to call it a skit. I don't think it's real. Where that guy comes out with that ridiculously long name. Is that where you got that from? Shout out to Osas. Ibrahim. Yes, big up. So, yeah. Take care, be good. Until next time, I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.